Hi, I'm Jeannie, and this is Wake Up. If you are not a Christian, I want you to know that you can become one today. I also want you to know that there is nothing that you've done that can stop you from becoming a Christian. You may have done some pretty terrible things in your life, but you can right now ask for the forgiveness and accept the blood of Jesus. His body was sacrificed once and for all, and it covered all the sins forever. Putting the prayer below on my YouTube channel. It's in the description box in my YouTube. So when you're watching this video on YouTube, you can just go down and read it. So now we're back in Matthew. We're still working on Matthew 8. We're talking about miracles that Jesus has performed. And we've already talked about the healing of the leper, and we talked about the centurion. So now we're going to start with verse 14. When Jesus came into Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she got up and began to wait on him. When evening came, many who were demon-possessed were brought to him, and he drove out the spirits with the word and healed all the sick. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took up our infirmities and bore our diseases. Verse 14 tells us that Peter was married. He had a mother-in-law. So when Jesus says, leave everything, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. That's what Peter did. He left his family to follow and serve Jesus. Now, Peter's mother-in-law was deathly ill. She had a fever and she was not recovering. And Jesus just went and touched her hand and she recovered fully, completely recovered, so that she was able to just get up and start serving. And you may think, well, that doesn't seem right, that she was just healed and sick and she gets up and she has to start serving. Well, she didn't have to start serving. She chose to start serving. When you have a miracle like that happen, when you realize the deity of Jesus Christ, you want to serve him. You want to go and do things for other people, and especially in the name of Jesus or for Jesus. And if Jesus were in your house and he had just healed you and you were feeling 100% great, you would be up and running around and trying your best to serve him as well. I would imagine. Then this is in the evening. So this has happened. And also remember that Jesus had already done a couple of miracles in that area, and people were following Jesus everywhere. And once they found where he was, they congregated. They went around and they found him, and they brought their sick and their demon possessed. And in that evening, they found him at Peter's house. It says many who were demon possessed were brought to him, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all the sick. And once again, Matthew is reminding us that this came from the prophet Isaiah. He took up our infirmities and he bore our diseases. So let's go back to the demon possessed and ill that Jesus healed. He healed them with a word. And we're not sure exactly what that word was here, but it seemed as though, and we're going to find out as we continue studying, that Jesus just said to them, go away. They could not even stand to be around Jesus. As soon as they would see Jesus coming, many of the demons who were possessing people would start yelling out at him, which we'll see in a few minutes in one of the other stories below in Matthew 8. So I'll just wait until we get there. In verses 19 through 22, a young priest comes and is asking Jesus what he has to do to serve him and follow him. So let's read that. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. Then a teacher of the law came to him and said, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus replied, Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Another disciple said to him, Lord, first let me go bury my father. But Jesus told him, Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. So verse 19 is kind of major because you have a teacher of the law. This is a scribe. This is someone who has written and rewritten these laws, written and rewritten the Old Testament words, and he teaches the law. So he knows very well the Old Testament that we call the Old Testament. They just called the Torah. And he knew what the prophecies were. He knew exactly who they were looking for, what kind of person they were looking for. So when Jesus told him, when he says, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go," that's kind of major because that's showing you that the priest knew very well who Jesus was. And Jesus replies to him, "Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." So Jesus is teaching them that you have to be willing to sacrifice a lot if you are going to follow him. That it's not a comfortable bed and breakfast that you're going to be staying in. It's going to be a hard road. There's no particular place that you can just settle down and call yourself home. Jesus never settled in one particular area. He was constantly moving. And the 12 disciples and the apostles, they also, and even Paul, the apostle, they didn't have a particular place that they stayed in. They were constantly moving, moving, moving. Now we know here that Peter was married and had a mother-in-law. And so he did have a home, but he was not at home very often because he was constantly moving, moving, moving. We don't know if his wife and family was with him while he was out there preaching. We know that a lot of women and families were out there preaching the gospel and spreading the word of God too after Jesus' resurrection. But it doesn't necessarily tell us who they all were. So we don't really know. A lot of people in Acts, we see that a lot of people who were following Jesus would sell all that they had to help out other people. Like you would see someone who had a need and they would go and they would say, "Well, I have this I can sell and give you the money so that you can take care of your problem." And there were a lot of people who did that. They were selling their houses and their animals and their worldly goods because they didn't really feel like they needed them anymore. And it was more important for them to share the gospel. So Jesus is telling the man, if you follow me, it's not going to be comfortable. So just understand you're not going to be living in comfort. We're going to be moving. And it doesn't tell us whether or not the guy followed, but we can kind of figure that he probably didn't. And people were following Jesus. So this guy was following Jesus. And this guy says, "Let me first go and bury my father, and then I will come with you." And Jesus replies, "Let the dead bury the dead. You follow me." The guy's dad wasn't dead. That wasn't what he was saying. He was saying, "I'll follow you, but first let me wait until my father passes." And that is just putting it off. And a lot of people have that. They're like, I want to become a Christian, but first let me go and do this, and first let me do that. And a lot of people think that they have to clean up their life and clean up their act before they follow Jesus. And Jesus is saying, no, don't do that. You come to me as you are right now, right now. And because this guy says that he has to bury his dad first, he's saying, let me wait, and that way I can have the land that my dad owns and it's going to become mine, and he gets his inheritance and all of that. So in other words, this guy doesn't want to miss out on his own inheritance that his father is going to give him. He wants to make sure he's there when his father dies. Jesus says, "Let the dead bury the dead." And what he means is that not dead people are going to come up and bury dead people, but he's saying if you are, let the dead, that is the spiritually dead, bury the dead. You come and follow me. He's telling the guy, I want to make you a teacher. You come and follow me because I'm going to teach you everything you need to know, and you're going to have the ability to teach others. But don't stay around for someone who is spiritually dead inside. You need to continue the work. So that's kind of hard, and a lot of people have a hard time understanding that Jesus is telling this guy to leave his father, and we don't know how old his father was. His father could be elderly and ready to die at any moment. His father could live 10, 15, 20 more years. We just don't know what the story is or the background of that. But we do know that Jesus says, don't wait around. Don't put it off because you got other things that are important that you have to do. When I call you, you come, and don't give any excuses. And again, we don't know whether or not that person followed Jesus. He could have said, "Oh, all right, I'm going to come with you," but we don't know. We don't get that information here. Okay, so you remember in 18, he had called the disciples to go to the other side of the lake. So that storyline wasn't dropped. It's being followed right here. Let's read that part. Then he got into the boat, and his disciples followed him. Suddenly, a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us, we're going to drown." And he replied, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and he rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and waves obey him." So here we have Jesus is completely comfortable sleeping on this um, boat. And now that's kind of important because Jesus was sleeping, and a lot of us put off sleeping because we have so many things to do that we don't really see sleeping as important. It's important. Anyway, Jesus is sleeping, and this crazy storm comes up, winds and waves. I mean, it was a bad storm. The waves were going over the boat, and the apostles were truly afraid for their life. They thought they were going to die. But Jesus, who has complete confidence in the Lord God, who has put him on a mission, and he knows what his mission is, he has complete confidence. And he asks them, "You guys, don't you have any faith in me? You're here with me. You're here with me. Why aren't you trusting me?" But even though he was, I guess, kind of chastising them for having little faith, he still got up, and with a word, he calmed the waves and the wind. They just stopped immediately. And that was another miracle that Jesus performed. It let people know that he was in control, not just of the demons that he was casting out, not just of human body. He was in control of nature itself. He could stop the winds. He could stop the waves. You remember the story of Jonah and the whale when he was trying to escape the mission that God had asked him to do? And he was on that boat, and so the waves and everything were coming, and they threw everything off that they could, and they were still afraid that they were going to sink. And Jonah says, "It's me. I'm the reason that your boat is about to sink, because I'm running away from my God. Just throw me overboard, and you'll be good." So they throw him overboard, and immediately the waves and the wind stop. And so I think Jonah thought he was going to get out of the mission, but he didn't. You guys know the story. A big fish swallows him up, and after 3 days, he goes and he vomits him onto the shore, the very shore where God was trying to send him. I think that's funny. Anyway, so we already know that God has complete control of Mother Nature. He has complete control of nature. And here we see that Jesus has complete control of nature. How does this man Jesus have complete control of illnesses, demons, and nature? How? Because he is God. He is God. And all of the things that Jesus is doing is pointing to the fact that he is God. And even that teacher of the law knew that he was God. He was the Christ, Messiah, Son of God, who came to rescue man. And now here's the most exciting part of this chapter. It's almost one of the most major things everybody knows about this story. Verses 28 through 34. When he arrived at the other side in the region of Gadarenes, two demon-possessed men came from tombs to meet him. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. "What do you want with us, Son of God?" they shouted. "Why have you come here to torture us before the appointed time?" Some distance from them, a large herd of pigs was feeding. The demons begged Jesus, "If you drive us out, send us to the herd of pigs." He said to them, "Go." So they came out and they went into the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and died in the water. Those tending the pigs ran off, went into the town, and reported all of this, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. Then the whole town came out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they pleaded for him to leave the region. This story is in 3 of the Gospels. It's in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I'm going to read the version in Mark because it gives a little more information, and then we're going to talk about the differences. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked, "What is your name?" He replied, "Legion, for we are many." He begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Please send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. So we see that in both of these stories, there was demon possession, and there were many, many demons inside this man or these two men. And there were at least 2,000 because there were 2,000 pigs that the demons went into. That's a lot. And even if it were one or two people, that's a lot. But I want to address the issue of whether or not it was one or two. That's what's so good about the Gospels, is that they're not in there trying to, "Oh no, he said two people and he only said one. Let's change it so that they're the same." That's not the reasoning. So if I am say I'm walking downtown and I run into an old friend, Susan, and she's there with her family, and I talk to them, I chat with them. Maybe I even go in and we, have a soda and sit down and chat and catch up and everything with her family there. When I go home, I might not say, "Guess what? I just saw Susan and her family." I will probably come home and say, "You'll never believe it. I just saw Susan and we had a chance to sit down and talk and catch up." The important thing was that I saw my friend Susan, and yes, while it's cool, I got to meet her family or see her husband, I might not necessarily say that right off the bat. And if I have a story that I need to tell that's a problem, like as a teacher, I might have a child who does something that he shouldn't do. And when I'm telling the principal or telling the parents about it, I might not tell them all about all the other people in the classroom and what they were all doing. I'm going to focus on that one child or that one person. And so that's when you're retelling a story, if you have a lot of people around and they're retelling stories, one person is going to miss something. And sometimes when you have people in the same room and they'll say, "Oh, and you know what, this happened, this," and another person will say, "Oh, don't forget that so-and-so did that." "Oh, that's right. That's right." So these stories, is not a contradiction. It's just what someone puts their emphasis on when they are retelling the story. So remember that when you see any kind of something that seems like it's a conflict, there's no conflicts. There's no contradictions in the Bible. All right, so let's get back to the story. So this demon is begging Jesus not to just make them go out of the man. They're saying, please don't do that to us. And I often wondered why. Why were they so concerned? Let me see, what do they say? Have you come to torture us before the appointed time? So they're asking Jesus, are you coming here to torture us before the appointed time? And I always wondered about that. Why are they talking about being tortured? Because Jesus is only telling them to leave the bodies. The demon possessed, he commands them to come out of the bodies. But they're saying don't torture us. So I'm often wondered about that. And I did find out what that actually meant in Matthew 12. You'll see down here in 43, verse 43 of Matthew 12. When an impure spirit comes out of a person, it goes through arid places seeking rest and does not find it. So it goes through arid places seeking rest and does not find it. Now we'll get to that verse because there's a lot there about keeping your house clean, and when someone has expelled a demon and that person doesn't clean up their life, it comes back. That's a whole story. When we get to 12, we'll discuss that. But it says that it comes out, it goes through arid places seeking rest and does not find it. It's seeking rest and it doesn't find it. So this is what the torture is. It's unrest. It's the inability to be content in what you are doing. Excuse me, Suki. That's too bright for us. Okay. Anyway, so Jesus allows them to go into the pigs, and then the pigs run into the water, a stink bank. They run into the water and drown themselves. A lot of people have a lot of ideas about why that happened. The demons, some people say, well, the demons made them go into the water. Well, why would the demons do that? They would want to stay in the pigs until humans came around, and then they could possess some other humans. I personally think that the reason is because the pigs would rather be dead than have demons inside of them. They were smart enough to know that they were smarter than a lot of humans. That's what I think, but I'm no authority on that. And I'll do a little more research and see if I can find anything that's actually compelling about why the pigs went down. Now, we do know that the pig herders went and told the rest of everybody what happened in this town, and they came and told Jesus to leave. You would think that they would see the miracle that this guy here was, that these two guys had been completely changed. They were so strong. You couldn't keep chains on them. You couldn't keep iron bars on them. They could break them. They were just walking around constantly screaming and yelling, no rest or no peace within them. And here they were now, saved, miraculously changed. You would think that they would see that and be happy for the men. Want to know, how in the world did you do it? Can you help us as well? But nope, they were worried about the fact that, hey, we can't be having all of our pigs running off into the water and drowning themselves, so please go away. That's our livelihood. In other versions, it has the demon-possessed man asking Jesus if he could stay with Jesus. Let me see, which one is that? In Mark and Luke, they talk about, and this is probably why they both only said there was one man, because they're focusing on this particular man. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with Jesus, but Jesus sent him away saying, return home and tell how much God has done for you. So the men went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him. So he was a testament. And that is the reason why Jesus didn't want him to come with him, even though he was asking, because he wanted this man to go back and be a living testament of the power of Jesus Christ and the power of God, the forgiveness power of God. That's the end of Matthew 8. And next time we'll talk about Matthew 9. Now is time for current events. Hi. Tried many times to finish off this video with the current event, and I finally found a little bit of time to do it while I'm waiting for my sister to arrive for a conference. So let's talk about it. Meat. We've already talked about meat. We've already talked about how they are making meat in the lab, and initially they thought that it wasn't going to be until about 2030 before that comes out and starts becoming marketable. But thanks to a lot of Chinese ingenuity, they're going to be coming out with it sooner than expected. In fact, they feel like within 2 years that we're going to be able to have lab meat in our grocery stores. Do you remember the price of the very first hamburger that they made? Yeah, that was really expensive. But now they've got it down to where it would be maybe $10 to $12 per pound for hamburger meat. That's still kind of expensive for them to expect people not to eat real meat. But they're working on it, and they think that within the next 2 years, they're going to be able to have lab-grown meat that is reasonably priced for the regular person. So this is one of those wake-up calls, guys. We're being told that because of climate change, we need to get rid of the cows. We need to get rid of the cows because the cows have too much methane gas, and that 18% of the methane in the whole wide world comes from cows. And that if we were to get rid of that, it would substantially reduce climate change. I don't know, you guys. I think we need to wake up. I really think that, yeah, they want to get rid of cows. I don't know what they plan to do without cows anymore. But without cows, we're not going to have milk either. I'm sure that they can make milk in a laboratory now. But we need to wake up because we're quickly coming to a world where animals and plants are not even going to be necessary as far as our eating is concerned. And of course, that is not the way God had intended us to eat and get our sustenance. So we need to think about why we would want to even start eating lab meat. I was taught that if you have a product, but you don't have a market, you must create a market. So it's like a little conspiracy theory. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm totally off base here, but it seems to me in order to create a market for lab-grown meat, they're going to have to start either making that normal meat unreliable, that is going to have diseases or bacteria in it, or way too expensive, or some kind of catastrophe where some kind of disease comes around and kills off all the cows. And then voila, there is suddenly a market for lab-grown meat. I don't know, you guys. I think this is a really good time to wake up and look at all the pieces coming together. You have a lot of people claiming that we have to get rid of farms that raise cattle because it hurts the environment. And you see that they are saying that we only have 10 more years left on this earth. I guess that's why they had to speed it up a little bit, because if they started 10 years from now, we wouldn't be here anyway, and it would be too late. So we had to speed it up so that we could have that lab-grown meat in 2 years. Anyway, I believe that we're going to be here for a long, long time. I don't think that 10 years is very accurate. And I think I'm probably rambling a lot right now, but I think that they're trying to make us have babies in the lab. Mm-hmm. They're trying to make us hate men. Men are the enemy. They're trying to make us not have gender. Like, your gender is not defined when you are born. You're not male or female, and we need to stop treating people with penises as males. It's crazy, you guys. Wake up. Our world's going crazy. We're going to be eating live meat within 2 years. I'll bet you within 5 years that something major is going to happen, and this lab grown meat or cultured meat or clean meat, however they want to call it, is going to become something more desirable to us for consumption, because something's going to happen so that regular yummy meat is going to become contaminated or something. Just I'm predicting that. Not that I am any kind of predicting type of prophecy person, but I'm predicting that, because if you have a product, you have to have a market for that product. Otherwise, there's no reason to have that product. I will put all of my sources below in the description box so you can research it yourself. And I have to tell you, I love a good old ribeye steak. I don't think there's any substitute for it except for maybe bacon. Okay, you guys, thank you. Bye bye.